All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are moving on into our excretory system, also commonly called the urinary system. Let's just get it up and running here. So, just like always, we're going to be talking about structure and function, the pathway that we're going to follow, and then we'll start getting into some of the more complicated processes. So here's a couple cartoons to get you guys started. Let's get going here with just basically the functions of the urinary system. And before we get started, I just want to do a little side note here on the difference between secretion and excretion. So secretion, all that's going to mean is that it's an active process, so it needs energy. Whereas excretion is usually the removal of waste, and it's a passive process. I'm not too worried about it if you mix up secrete and excrete, just as long as we're talking about the same thing in terms of what's moving. All right, well, let's get started here. So we're looking at one of the main functions of the urinary system as being the excretion of metabolic waste. So that means the waste that occur due to a chemical process, we want to get rid of them. We want to get them out of the blood and out of our body. So for example, urea, creatinine, and uric acid are all things that we don't want. We know that urea comes from the liver. See our ammonia, which is the breakdown of our nitrogenous wastes. We have to break down proteins. Liver, we don't want it anymore. Also, it maintains the water-salt balance. We have a certain amount of salt, a certain amount of water into our blood, and it's all about the blood pressure. We'll be talking about the mechanism in pretty big detail a little bit later. These are our salts and our ions that are going to be used to regulate it. Maintenance of the acid-base balance. Remember, we want our pH around 7.4 over blood. If it starts to get too acidic or too basic, we want to be able to regulate that. And so we do that by excreting H+, reabsorbing HCO3-. So these will be forming with H+ to form carbonic acid and into the CO2 and H2O. And all of these mechanisms we're going to go into great detail. This is just a quick little intro. And then also some secretions of hormones, and those hormones renin and erythropoietin. Both of those ones are meant to help us regulate our blood pressure mechanism. And again, we'll be getting into that in detail. All right, so let's get going here with the actual parts of the urinary system. We have two blood vessels. One that's going to be entering, which is the artery, is going to be entering into the kidneys, and the renal vein is going to be exiting and taking it back up to the heart before it gets oxygenated again. The parts that we're going to be looking at is the kidneys. This is what's actually used to filter the blood and produce urine. The ureters are going to be the vessel that transports the urine down into the bladder. There's two of them coming from each kidney, and then the urinary bladder, as we know, is going to store it. And then finally, the urethra is what passes the urine outside of the body. So let's get a little bit closer look at the organs. So our kidneys, we're looking at them in the lumbar region, which means the lower back area. And they're covered by a tough capsule of connective tissue. It's meant for a little bit of protection. And we have something called a concave depression, which is right in here, and that's called the hilus. So this is where the veins and the arteries are entering and exiting. It's like the kidney bean that we did in our plant lab. The hilus is that little depression. And like I said, it's the renal artery and vein, which is entering and exiting there. All right, the next one we're looking at is the ureters, as I just suggested. These are the tubes that are going to connect our kidneys to our bladder in order for us to relay that material. Three-layered walls, mucosa layer, just like we were talking about in reproduction. These are secreting mucus to help with travel. Smooth muscle, which is helping our urine to move through peristalsis. And then also connective tissue, So peristalsis, don't forget, it's the involuntary muscle contractions that are going to cause that urine to be passed along. Just like if we're hanging upside down, our urine would still be able to go from our kidneys to our bladder. All right, the next one we have is our urinary bladder. This is going to be the device that stores our urine. It has 3 openings, 2 coming from the ureters and then 1 opening into the urethra. The bladder wall is expandable, which means that once it gets full, it can expand even more. So to allow for some give, you can tell from experience that it's nice to have that expandable wall. It just doesn't mean that it's full. You're just going to pee yourself. That'd be awkward for everybody. Stretch receptors, just as in the alveoli in the lungs, there's nervous tissue that's going to send a message back up to the brain to tell you that your urine is full and that you should probably find an area to take care of business. There's 2 sphincters that release the urine into the urethra, just like we had in the stomach and the small intestine openings. These are the muscles that are going to control what's entering and exiting. So the urethra is the final one we're going to be talking about. This is just the small tube that's going to lead to the external opening. And obviously the function is finally to get the urine out of the body. In the females, it's a little bit shorter than in the males. And just remember, the urethra also transports semen in males, and that's why it was so important to have that neutralizing compound in the male reproductive part in order to neutralize the acidic urine. So let's talk about urination. We talked about it before. The stretch receptors in the wall of the bladder are going to signal, give a nervous impulse when it is a certain amount full, 250 mils. And it's a motor impulse. This stuff, don't worry about too much. We're going to get more into the nervous impulse and what causes that in the nervous system. Last one we're going to do. It causes the bladder to contract, and it's called micturition. Maybe you guys can just say it out loud, because obviously I can't. And that's just urination. But hey, how about we just do this? Urination. It's way easier to say. And here's a little mechanism. You don't have to know anything. This is just your spinal column. This is where the nerve impulses are going to be coming and going. And then just a little summary here. Oops. So just in summary, just make sure you know the general structures. So more likely just the pathway that it's going to travel. And then also what's going to be happening in each region. So for the most part, this is the nice, easy intro. When we start talking about the kidney and the structure of it, how it's made up of a nephron and how everything gets filtered, and the hormone regulation of everything else, the blood pressure, it gets a lot more complicated. So enjoy this one because it should be pretty straightforward. But copy down any questions you have and have yourselves a fantastic night. And again, if this is Morgan, have yourself a fantastic 4 minutes until we see you in class.